Hello. What a treat to be here. Can it really be time for another technical working group webinar for digital traffic orders? Hang on, just hearing something. Yes, it is time for another technical webinar. What a agenda we have in store for you today. Talking of agendas, my glamorous assistant will now move the agenda to the next slide. Thank you very much, whoever you are. Welcome and introduction. That's me right now. Number one, first up, just want to thank you all who have participated so far in private beta in any way. We are very grateful for your support, whether you've already sent stuff into the integration environment or the production environment, or you're getting ready to do so, or you're getting ready to onboard, or whatever it might be. Thank you very much for your efforts. That'll be a bit of a theme of today's webinar, actually. So without further ado, the man whose dulcet tones you've gotten used to hearing on these webinars, update from previous webinar, it's your friend of mine, ladies and gentlemen, John Cooper.
Thanks, Paul, and hi, everyone. I'm John Cooper. I'm the product owner for the D-TRO Beta, and I'm here to give you a quick update on where we've got to since the last time we were all here. As you will all know, we launched our private beta on the 15th of October, and this means we are now taking and continue to take live, real, digital D-TRO extracts from the full legal version of the orders into the D-TRO system. There is admittedly only a small amount of orders in the system. We're working on that and hoping that in the coming weeks we will get more volume. This is very important for us, obviously, as we head towards an assessment later. We've been, as you know, increasing the version number as the project has progressed, and we've reached version 3.2.4 of the data specification. And we've been holding steady on that version for a number of weeks. We realized that it was counterproductive to be continually releasing extra versions when we should be aiming at stabilizing and programming when we go into the next version. So we do hold up our sleeve the going to the next version, but that will probably be in about 3 weeks, just before we head into our assessment. This is giving time for the system to stabilize on the current version, and we know from talking to you that this is helping. I'd like to call out the increased use of GitHub, and I'm hoping that in the chat you'll see all our links. If not, we can post them in again. I did get in there early and post these links. I'm hoping that they live once the webinar starts. GitHub, as you know, is the professional tool of choice for recording bugs and issues on technical, digital, and presumably other types of projects. But the issues have been going at a rate of knots in recent weeks. We thank you very much for the raising of these issues. We are doing our best to acknowledge and deal with them, and we will try to do so in a reasonable amount of time. If you see an issue that interests you, please do go on there and comment, and we are closing the issues down as and when they're dealt with. Thank you very much for doing that. It's very helpful, and it's our best form of technical iteration on the projects. Next, a quick update on the secondary legislation. This is still planned for later this year. I still can't give you an exact date, but it is coming. We know that this will table to the public and the technical community the full proposal of the descriptions of which TROs are in and out of scope of the D-TRO service, and we know that interests you all very much. And obviously this other part which is of great interest is the dates for the requirement of publishing your initially new orders and then your library of archive orders. Just a final mention, and we will come back to this later, about the updating of the website. All the videos have gone on, the FAQ has been updated. We're working on the next version still, and this is a continuous process. So there's a quick update on where we've got to with the project, and so now back to Paul.
Thank you very much, John Cooper. John, did you give your traditional request for questions in the chat? Sorry if I missed that, but yeah, number one, guys, put your questions in the chat. Number two, we're going to have a crack at bringing people into the conversation so they can speak and ask their questions out loud. So, you know, what could possibly go wrong there? Let's see how that goes. That was suggested by one George. So thank you for that suggestion, George. Now, I would like at this point to introduce someone with years of stakeholder engagement, someone with huge knowledge of the sector, someone passionate about this industry. But they weren't available. So here's Dr. Gareth Tilley.
Thank you, Paul, for that kind introduction. What I wanted to do was give an overview of where we are with private beta. So I think most folk know me by now. I'm Gareth Tilley. I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Manager for the D-TRO service. Here's the kind of headline figures, effectively. So everyone knows we've got this two-stage approach to management of the service onboarding. We've got the integration environment, which is our test bed, and there for people to use to test against before people go on to the live production environment. That's our stage 2. And in terms of the headline figures, so we've got 12 different organizations in the integration environment at the moment. So they're fully onboarded and using the service. We've got, across those organizations, we've got 16 individuals. So it's really good numbers, and we're really pleased with those. And then in terms of what's in the service itself, we've had over 40 D-TROs submitted to the integration environment by 5 different organizations. So in terms of data publishers and people putting in D-TROs into the integration environment for consumers to consume against and test against, that's really good, and we're really pleased with that. The other thing I'd like to thank people for is the questionnaires which have been completed. So key to the success of the service and key to us doing our continuous improvement and getting this as good and in a good place as possible before we go live with the public beta service is getting all that feedback. So thanks to everyone who's completed the questionnaire for that. So that's the integration environment. Then in terms of the live production environment, as John said, this went live on the 15th of October. At the moment, we've got 4 organizations successfully onboarded. The way that it works in the production environment, I think, again, people are very aware of this. Digital solution providers, DSPs, as we call them, need to be linked to traffic regulation authorities, that's local highway authorities typically. And with that linkage, so we've got 4 organizations, but effectively 2 DSPs in the environment, and they've linked to 8 different TRAs. Interestingly, one of the TRAs is on both of the digital solution providers. So that will be interesting that we've got that mix in the production environment already, which is really interesting, really good to see. At the moment, we haven't got too much volume in the service. We've got only 4 D-TROs, which have been published by against 4 different TRAs by one digital solution provider, but we're really hoping that number will increase over the next week. I just wanted to flag a couple of lessons learned. We've got, I'm sure most of you know, we've got regular touchpoint meetings in with lots of you, very much to drive the take up in the production environment. But there's been a couple of themes when we've had those meetings, and I did just want to draw out some kind of highlights and just be really clear on some of the topics that have come up. So the first one is about data deletion. So for the production environment, we're very much wanting real live data, which is extracts of genuine D-TROs. So that's working well. At the same time, people have then asked, well, what happens if something's slightly incorrect and can data be deleted? How does that work? So the short answer is yes. So we can delete that on your behalf as DFT. But ideally, there's an endpoint which can be tested as well, which enables users to delete data too. So if there is any errors in the data, if something comes out where there is an error, data can be deleted from that environment. So I just wanted to highlight that. The other question we've had is just around the onboarding of traffic regulation authorities, in particular that linkage with digital solution providers. So what we've done on the program is create an expression of interest form. All the traffic regulation authorities who are involved in private beta have completed that. We've published the list of traffic regulation authorities involved in private beta on GitHub. And I think, we've had comments on that, as I'm sure most of people have seen that in detail. And then the point I did want to just raise again that if you are a traffic regulation authority with a digital solution provider, you don't need to do any onboarding because the linkage, the digital solution provider will be making that link when they onboard to the service. So if you're a TRA who exclusively publishes through digital solution providers, then you don't need to onboard to the service directly yourself, as long as you've completed that expression of interest form. Paul, they were the kind of key headlines and the key themes I wanted to go through. Back over to you.
And you did a fine job of it, Gareth, if I may say so. Well, long-time webinar viewers might know the scope and agenda that we tend to stick to. So they might know what's coming next. But here's a man who needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jonathan Harrod Booth.
Thank you, Paul. So I get to talk about the data specification. I have to say I'm fronting a team, so it's not all me. And so when your comments come in, we're working through them, triaging them. As John said, we are very happy to receive your comments and challenges. It's all good input. The specification is evolving. It wasn't really tested in any great volume in previous projects, and so you coming in and challenging and saying this doesn't look right, or could you add this in, or what have you, is incredibly valuable to us. Just before private beta went live, we released version 3.2.3, and fairly quickly we got a raft of comments come in, mainly through GitHub, which is great because that means everybody can see them, but some by email direct. We looked at those comments and triaged them and figured out how to try and address them, and we released version 3.2.4 on the 17th of October, so that's just after private beta went live. And the aim was to address as many of the queries and inconsistencies as possible. However, and I do caveat this by saying we had to take the judgment call that said, okay, we will address things in as timely a manner as possible. So we'll make the decision on whether we make a change or not, on whether it affects our code base, because we recognized at the point we started to change our own code base, it would have pushed that release of a newer version out. And so that was part of our triaging process, was to say, did it affect our code base? Everything goes into our backlog. There's nothing lost. And we will ultimately address all of the issues that are being raised. But within 324, we specifically address those that did not affect the code base. And that was a conscious decision to do so, to be quick. So I think 323 lasted as the primary specification for about 10 days. As John said, we're obviously looking at all of those other queries that have come in, and we're working in the background to triage those, address them, figure out what we need to do in terms of the data model, the schema, the documentation, how that then cascades into the service, API definitions, interface control documents, the whole gamut. So it potentially changes cascade across everything, validation rules, sample files, the whole lot. As John said, we recognise the tension, and it's come up in a few meetings, but we recognise it ourselves, between trying to react as quickly as possible when issues arise and issuing a new version, and the obvious strain that might put on your resources on your end, in that you don't really know what's coming next, and there seems to be a new version every few days, every 2 weeks or so. And so the conscious decision was taken to hold fire on 324. Thankfully, I would say we watch very carefully the comments coming in primarily through GitHub, yes please, and possibly by email, which is okay. We'll still happily accept them, but we'd prefer stuff to be put on GitHub. There's less comments which are of a technical critical nature. So we are currently holding, and the expectation is that towards the end of November, but we will announce in advance that we will issue a further version, and that will attempt to address all of the outstanding issues, that we are able to do so within the resources that we have in that available time. The backlog maintains, and there will, of course, be future releases moving into the future, but we would expect them to be done on a more managed, stable, and pre-warned basis. Please do continue to raise any issues you have. Our preference is to do it on GitHub so that everybody can see those issues being raised and our responses to them. But that's where we currently stand. So we are trying our best. We don't have endless resources on our side. We are trying our best to be both nimble and stable at the same time, which of course nobody can achieve perfectly. Next slide, please, Gareth. So in response to a user request, we set out producing a bunch of sample files that primarily look at TTROs, and there was a list that came in on one of the GitHub requests that said, please give us examples of the following. So we've put those together. So there are a handful of examples that deal with temporary height restrictions, road closures, suspensions, and the like. There's also one which is actually they're all from Somerset, not produced by Somerset, purely because I live in Somerset, so I pick places I knew. And there is one partial example of a real TRO from Derbyshire as well. And I'm happy to point people at the real TRO if they want to compare the two. It's not a point that I have discussed with my DFT colleagues, but I wonder whether DFT might wish to offer a service for the first 10 TROs that come in, D-TRO records that come in, to say, well, if they're genuinely real, send us notification of where we can find the real TRO, and we'll do a cross-check and see what we think in terms of the coding. Maybe that would be quite a sensible thing to do. We can't do it for hundreds, clearly, but it might be interesting to do it for some. So that's just a thought to put out there on the fly. Next slide, please. As was presented last time, if you want to use the sample files, feel free. If you want to validate them, so you're validating them against the 324 schema, you can't just pick the two up and throw them into a validator. You do need to do a little bit of editing, because there's a bit of system-related content that exists at the top of each of the files and the last the last bracket, and you need to strip those out, or else you'll get validation errors. But that's just to pre-warn what we did before. In terms of the examples that are now up and labelled 324, they are actually all pointing at SWA codes for real authorities, so Derbyshire and Somerset. But you might find that you run across a SWA code that doesn't exist. Word of caution, of course, if we find a SWA code that doesn't exist coming in, the system will reject it because it says it's not one I recognise. So please use something that the system is aware of. Just a footnote, and to show you these things are live and real, we are invested. There's GitHub issue 25, and I wouldn't expect people to say, oh yes, I know what that is, which is about an inconsistency between the schema and the sample files in terms of the structure. And we're looking at that quite carefully about how to address that. It is an issue that is quite rightly been pointed out, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can with how best to address that. And I think that's all I was going to say. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, JHB. Yeah, just to underline John's comments there around that balance between the stability and progressing with the service. That's always a tricky thing with these government digital services. It's something that I've been through before. We welcome your feedback about the pace of development, the best way of doing it, anything like that. We are here to listen and tweak the formula on that one. Thank you for drawing attention to it, JHB. Now, I do believe we've got a bit of a treat coming up next, because we have Vignesh talking about reporting bugs on digital traffic orders. I believe that's right, Vignesh?
Yep, that's right. Hi, everyone. My name is Vignesh. I work as a technical lead on D-TRO. And firstly, I'd like to thank you guys for giving us all the feedback from using D-TRO. Very useful and valuable feedback, including possible enhancement that we could add to the application, as well as bugs to identify things we may have gotten wrong. And that's what I wanted to just talk to you guys about in this webinar, in this part. I appreciate quite a few of you have reached out to us via GitHub issues to raise a bug or a defect. And what I'd like to request from you all as a favor is to possibly try to standardize those requests coming in. So the next couple of slides is basically an ask for you guys to try to follow this template, when raising a bug. So first and foremost, you see there on the screen, if you could provide full details of the endpoint you are calling, with all the parameters and body, including any payload you happen to be using. This example here is a curl command. Of course, if you happen to provide another form of example, whether it's a Java, C#, Python, that'll be quite useful, including, as you can see under the data section, the payload, the body of the message that you are sending. So the body may contain the full TRO you're sending, or like here in the case of using this search endpoint, the basic query parameters that are required. So please provide us a full endpoint call whenever you are raising a bug via GitHub issues. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Second part is the full error message. So that's exactly the message that comes from D-TRO before you guys parse the error message to get the bit that you want. So the full thing would be very useful for us to identify where the issue might be. Thirdly, the date and time when you try to make the API call to an endpoint and when the error was raised. That helps us to look into our logs and identify what the issue might be, as we have more information in our logs. It just helps us and helps you identify and get the fix in as quick as possible. Of course, we'd like to know what you expected, because in some cases, what you were expecting may not be correct, and then you may want to request that, oh, can we have it this way, please, as a feature change. And we'd like to hear that. That's a valuable feedback to us. So if you could provide us expected behavior, actual behavior, that'll help us determine if this is a bug or if this is a possible feature change that we can apply in the future. Fifth point there, steps to reproduce. Exactly as it says in the tin. We'd like to know how you got to this error, how the error has occurred. So we'd like to make sure that we could get it right. So we don't just turn around and say to you, no, this doesn't exist. We want to make sure we get it right. We can reproduce it. So please provide us that information. The sixth point, if you could provide a schema version that you're using, that'll be also helpful. And lastly, just any other information you feel it's relevant for us, that you feel is necessary for us. There's a particular scenario that you're running through. If there's a particular payload that you're trying, it's slightly different from the previous ones you've been doing, any information you think will be relevant or to help us, that'll be very useful for us. So yeah, so those are the 7 points that we'd like you to follow whenever you're creating a bug. For enhancements, please stick to your current format of just writing exactly what you're looking for or hoping for. It just gives us as much detail as possible and allows us a chance to think about it and then get back to you with either a solution or just to talk to you more and understand more of what you'd like to have, what you'd like to see. And that'll be obviously really grateful and really helpful for us. Yep, that's all for me. I'll pass it back over to Paul.
Wow. I think, gang, that we've done it again. Great agenda there, packed full of interesting content. Now we go over to the section that I like to call, because it is called Q&A. Now, last I looked in the chat, we had no questions as such. Did anyone have a question they want to raise? I must admit, feel free to come in here, John Cooper, as to how this is going to work, or maybe won't work if no one has any questions. But can they put their hands up? And if so, then we can promote them.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't done this before, but we were initially thinking that we'd have written questions in the chat, and then when it came to take them, we would promote the person that wants to ask. If anyone does want to just ask a question, you could try raising your hand and we can see if we can bring you into the webinar that way though.
But I mean, if we've made the offer for people to ask questions either method, and no one hasn't, I mean, that's a huge win for us, isn't it? Putting the offer out there, but no one taking it up. I mean, that's a win-win. Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water. Feel bitter about how much this bottle of water cost. I won't even repeat it on this webinar. Well, JC, no one has put their hand up that I can see or put any questions in the chat. So I think we are safe now to hear from the man himself, George. Oh. John, can you promote him? Let's see how we go.
Let's see how it works.
Hold on, George. This feels very much like talk radio host, doesn't it? I'm Chris Sutton, you're Robbie Savage, and George is calling us today from who knows where. There's only so much time I can fill here, JC. But I can keep giving it a go if you like.
I've made George a presenter. George, can you try coming on camera and off mute?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello. Well, I thought I'd ask a question because I mean I suggested it, and at least I'll ask one. Why do you think you've only got 4 D-TROs in production at the moment? What is there anything that you can do to move that forward?
Yeah. Thank you for that, caller. Let me answer that first, and then I'll pass over to Gareth to add on to. The calls that I sat in on last week with some of the big developers, it felt like we were just about to get over a little hump and start to get more stuff coming. You know, it was like, oh, our development's just about to get to a certain stage, or, you know, we had some errors that with somebody that we sort of navigated our way through. So I personally am expecting more stuff to come in. But Gareth, what's your take on that, sir?
Yeah, very similar, Paul. I mentioned earlier we've got regular touchpoint meetings in with quite a lot of folk now, so they're either kind of weekly or fortnightly. The feedback we've got, and tracking issues in GitHub, which I know you're active on as well, George. It sounds like a couple of folk has just wanted to do a bit more testing or kind of trial things that kind of highlighted just technical issues when publishing to the integration environment. So we're hoping next week, or that the kind of this week now, that people should be publishing a lot more in Anger. George, is very much our hope, and we've got, as I said, these touchpoint meetings in really to unblock any issues that may be arising from a publisher perspective.
Very good, thanks. From a consumer point of view, it's my point of view. I'm really kind of waiting to see that data come in, and then take a view in the round of a lot of data, if you see what I mean, rather than analyzing in detail the format and the everything. It from a consumer point of view, the best approach is really to get that volume of data and then start to look at how things appear in the broad sense.
Thank you, George, and thank you for the comment. Yeah, I would agree. We're all looking forward to seeing more data getting into the environments. Does anyone else have a question at all? How does it work, John? Do you demote George now?
Let's see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is good for us getting the hang of this anyway. We will do this in future technical webinars. Goodbye, George. How little we knew ye. Okay. Well, it doesn't look, gents, as if there's any other questions. So, do we have any closing messages for people? I do believe we have a bit more on the slide deck, some updates and whatnot after the Q&A. Yeah, here we go. Take it away.
Thanks, Paul. Just wanted to remind people of upcoming sessions we've got in place. We've got regular engagement with a lot of folk at the moment, so thanks a lot for attending those. And I think the feedback we've had on them has been really good, so thanks again. And we found it really useful to understand where everyone is on their D-TRO journey. We've got our next webinar is on the 21st of November. That's scheduled for 3 o'clock, and invites, I think if they're not out, they should be out very shortly. There's also a couple of conferences we're attending though, and if people are there, you can see us in person. So the first one is the Transport Technology Forum, the autumn conference, and that's in Birmingham on the 12th of November. And we'll be presenting there. We've got D-TRO as an active working group. It's one of the kind of conduits we're using in the program, and we'll be giving an update to the whole of the TTF. And there's a lot of local authorities attend that as a conference, so it's a very useful outreach tool for us. The other one I wanted to highlight is the Google Cloud Public Sector Summit we're also attending, and there's going to be a kind of roundtable discussion, which I believe, Paul, you're involved in as well. So there's two places you can come and meet us in person if you wish. And then
thank you, Gareth. I'm quite looking forward to that. See you on the 26th. I thought you were done, Gareth, so I shouldn't have come onto camera. Take it away.
That's all right. I think everyone's very familiar with this page by now. GitHub to raise technical issues. Thanks again. I know everyone said it, but thanks so much for using that as a tool to raise the technical issues. That's proving brilliant for us. Transport Technology Forum, I've just mentioned, but they host our website. That's got all our announcements, our newsletters. It's got the FAQ on there as well. It's got the mailing list sign up. So go to the TTF website for further information about the programme. D-TRO@dft.gov.uk email address. And then we do have a playlist. So this webinar and all the others will be excitingly put up on YouTube for people to enjoy at their pleasure. Back to you then, Paul.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gareth, Vignesh, John, and myself. What an excellent webinar, packed full of content. I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Stay frosty and see you for webinar 6.